let's define a vehicle class to represent any type of a vehicle, such as a car, airplane, ship, train, and the like. As we learned that when you define a class, the instance members are based on the following observation. If you are the vehicle object, what you should remember. That becomes the instance member, also that's a state of the object. So let's find just a few common things among all types of vehicles for just simple illustration. Suppose we have a maker of the vehicle, so let's have a private string make of the vehicle and the year that vehicle was built. So if we have a class defined something like this, then we can utilize that. So in the static main method as a starting point of execution, we can define vehicle v1 is new vehicle like that. So as you create the object, what happens inside the computer memory is something like this. For this line, vehicle v1, so we create a variable which is a reference variable named v1, and the new vehicle creates an object of a vehicle type. In the vehicle type class, we have defined the two instance members. One is a make, the other is a year. So make and the year becomes instance member within the object. And then the location or reference or C++ terminology address of the object just created is stored in v1. So that's what we have in memory diagram though. And as you create an object using keyword new, the class is a constructor is called. Constructor is a special method of which the name is the same as the class name, and then the method does not give a return type. So in this case, we have not defined any constructor at all, but this works fine. So Java rule is that if you do not give a constructor of the class, the default constructor is assumed to be there. Default constructor is the constructor with no parameter. So this is a default constructor, does nothing. So this one is assumed. Whether you give this or not, there is no difference. So that's why this line of the code works fine. But if you give a passing argument to the constructor, v2 vehicle, suppose I want to give a make and the year right away, GM and 2020 and the like, then this one is in error because in class vehicle should have a constructor that takes those parameters. So we should provide another constructor which takes two parameters, a string and integer like that. And then as you do this way, when object is created, this constructor will be called. So we have two constructors. Constructors are method, two methods with a different parameters. That's called method overloading, not overriding. Overriding is a completely different one. So using method overloading, you can provide as many constructors as you want. The way the object you create, you can provide a variety of ways of doing so. Like when you create an object of a vehicle, providing just make only, or you can, if you want to create a vehicle with just a year only, there are a variety of ways you can allow object to be created. Then for each case, you need to provide a corresponding constructor. Here, a constructor that is one integer is not given, so we have error. So we need to provide a such to allow that. Now, it's there. Then you provide 4 ways of creating the vehicle object. One thing I want you to remember is that the default constructor with no parameter, default constructor is assumed if there is no other constructor. So if you don't give a constructor at all, as I told you, default constructor is assumed so that this line works fine because the default constructor is anyway implied there. So that's okay. But once you give constructors, at least one constructor, suppose I have given this constructor, which takes one string only. If a constructor is present, then you can see default construct is not available. Because of that, this is in error. So this first line, remember that we are invoking default constructor, but error says vehicle parentheses are only blank, that is default constructor. So default construct is not available since we have already one constructor. So we have to give a default constructor if one constructor is present, and then for the other we need to provide that, then all errors are gone. So when you declare a class, remember that there is a no constructor at all, then default one is assumed to be available so that you can create object without passing any argument. But once you start giving one constructor, then default construct is not assumed, not implied, so that you have to give explicitly.